clinical psychologist and a researcher. I'm married to my husband, and he is now Army Reserve. But we were active Army before that, and our National Guard before that. So we've been in the military pretty much since shortly after 9/11. And so my children, I have 3 boys. We've all kind of lived through, the post 9/11 world as a family. It's hard when, an employer knows that you're a spouse and you're going to be moving. Because, we moved on average every 1.5 to 2 years. So it was difficult to find employment for me. And for my children, it was especially challenging because they were always the new kid. So they were always going to a new school, being the new kid, which is really difficult. They're much more, there's a higher probability of their being bullied, which has happened to my sons. And then there's the added layer of, I have a son who's on the autism spectrum. And, that's been a really huge challenge with him because, having to move and explain that and, start all over again somewhere, it's been really hard. Well, when my husband would be told that he was going to deploy, that first rush of, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? What are we going to do? That's hard, the first moments, because they're mission ready. So they're thinking about, okay, what am I doing next? And how do I prepare for this deployment? So they kind of separate emotionally, at least my husband did, because he's like very mission focused, trying to figure out with us, power of attorney so that you could do the taxes, so you could, deal with housing on base. So all of that kind of to-do list, and then with the kids, making sure that they spend as much quality time with dad as possible. Once he returned, that's a whole other process. I mean, what everyone sees is a 2-minute clip of homecoming that, it's so great, it's wonderful, and it is. But your husband, wife has been away for, 9 months, 12 months, in our case, 15 months. And, they've had rules under mom, and then there's dad coming back. Or, the oldest son taking on the man of the house role, so things are different. So it's almost like you have to relearn how to be together again. They've got the invisible wounds of war often. They have to go from one extreme to the other. And for my husband, who was in Guard at the time, there's not a lot of a safety net when you come back. It's not like you're going back to a unit on a base and you have all those resources and help. National Guard, it's basically you go back home and you have to learn how to deal with that. So for us, he had symptoms of PTSD when he came home. And that was really, really hard with the homecoming and reintegration. It was difficult. He was different. He wasn't sleeping. He was stressed out all the time, and he seemed sad. He didn't really do well at first, coming back with the family and wanting to go out and do things. So I'd have to explain to my children, that, Daddy, he's been in a war. He's been, and just for some background, my husband's been combat deployed 3 times. So frontline infantry stuff, that's intense. I think that the culture, the military culture, and I know it's changing for the better now, but it's very much about, not talking about these things, not dealing with, anything except the mission, and, being ready for that and focused. And, this is seen as a sign of weakness. But I think he came to realize that now it's affecting my family. I have a son who's on the autism spectrum, and that's been a really huge challenge with him because having to move and explain that and start all over again somewhere. To make it easier for him, the transition from one place to another, we'd often use social stories. So I would draw or print out pictures of where we were going to be, the new house, the new school, The new, public library because he loves to read, the new teacher if I could. And I would make a book with all these pictures and we'd talk about it as a story, like, okay, when we move, we took a picture of the moving truck because we knew what company we were going to work with. When we move, this is what's going to happen, and this is going to be your new school, and this is going to be your new teacher, and this is going to be the new environment we're going to be in. And that really helped. And then, with the kids, making sure that they spend as much quality time with Dad as possible. We went ahead and made them these like little daddy dolls. So Dad got his picture taken and they put it on a pillow. And my sons carried it around all the time. We'd mail him fun packages all the time. Like they'd throw in their little things, like things that they drew in school. And for them, it made a difference when they were in a military, in a school that was like DODEA, which is, Department of Defense, educational. And they had friends and peers that were going through the same thing. It was a lot harder when we've been in the public school system, when there's not necessarily other military kids around. I'm very fortunate that I have a really strong group of military spouse friends, and so many of us are going through the same things. And it's funny, there's still that stigma around it, because I think because I'm a clinical psychologist, I don't know, my friends and even their friends reach out to me and say, look, this is what's happening in my relationship, and I don't know what to do. And yeah, there's still a stigma there, but when you reach out, it's amazing how many people go, oh my God, that's what's happening with us. This is what we're going through, and nobody talks about it. So I've been able to really, connect with a lot of spouses who have gone through or are going through similar situations. So we can just say, oh my God, he had a bad day, and we went to, I don't know, to the park, and he just didn't want anything to do with it, too many people, so he couldn't, he didn't do well there, and it's just so frustrating sometimes, just to kind of have someone to vent with who's been there or who is there is extremely helpful. Well, oftentimes, the service member, because they're struggling, they might not see the impact that they're having on you and your kids, your family. And honestly, it does take baby steps. I mean, you kind of have to choose your battles. There'll be some bad days where, they can't handle being around crowds or something like that, and that's okay. You can't, absolutely do everything with them all the time. So you kind of have to, pick your battles, pick, what's important. But if there's something that's really important that you really want your spouse involved in, talk to them about the importance of it for you. Because oftentimes we don't say anything because we're worried that they're going to, get upset, or we're worried that it might affect them in a bad way, because we just want them to be okay, So, talk to them ahead of time about an event. It's almost like with my child on the autism spectrum, to be honest with you, a lot about expectation and what's going to happen next. Because, the reality is, crowds for my husband used to be not a good thing, and now it's okay. Now thankfully he's doing incredibly well. But in that process, those baby steps of, letting him know, what's going to happen. And I've also brought in support from his fellow soldiers. So if there was a time where I could tell that he was kind of distant, and I'd be like, hey, to one of his friends, can you check on him, because I can't reach him. Not physically reach him, but I couldn't get through. And sometimes, his pals can, his friends can. So using those kinds of strategies, and making sure that, he knows how things are affecting us. And also, I would say, giving him a way out if there is something there that triggers or that he's overwhelmed by, that, okay, if this isn't working, then we can, leave at such and such a time, or anything like that. So really making sure that their comfort level is good. It's important to talk about it, because if we don't talk about it, then, you know, others won't talk about it, and it becomes this hidden thing, and you think you're alone. You know, you think that no one else is going through this, when the reality is that so many of us are going through this. And it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to talk to your friends and family and try to get the support that you need. It's not a dirty old secret, you know, it's something that you should be able to talk about openly and freely so that you can get the support that you need for your spouse, for yourself, for your family. And that's why I chose to talk about it. It's not easy, you know, to say, hey, you know, this is what's going on in my family, but it's important.